Hey Cosmin, good to see you, and thank you for joining us on the second episode of the Source Branch. How you doing this morning?
Hi, Jonathan. I'm doing fine.
Well,
I
I
was
guess it's
doing
not.
fine, actually.
I guess I guess it's technically not your morning. Why don't you tell everyone where you're joining us from?
Okay, so hi, my name is Cosmin. I'm from Romania. I'm a web integrator at Nutrient. Jonathan loved that term, web integrator.
We're going to talk about
So,
that some more for sure, like as we get into your background. Um, why don't we start there then? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into software development, uh, how you got into web technologies, what you were doing prior to working for Nutrient, how you joined up with Nutrient, and kind of what you've been doing now. I think we can cover all that. And I know you're starting to use Quad Code as well, and I'm
yeah.
starting to use it as well. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit at the end. But why don't we start with your journey? Start from the beginning.
Oh God, my journey was quite interesting, let's say. So I finished high school as accountant. So when I was trying to decide what college to follow, I was like, okay, I have no idea because accounting is not for me. So I got a job as a seller representative for phone companies, selling contracts, selling phones and stuff like that, because at the time it was really in vogue. Everybody wants a cell phone. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I was doing that, and in the free time, I was uh, s- spending my time at the internet cafe. The internet was just popping up, and everybody was like, "Do you see that and that and that?" Of course, playing video games and browsing the web. I start seeing all kind of websites, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool. Maybe I should do something like this." And the Matrix movie came up, and I was like, "Oh, fuck. I love that movie. I need to do that." And I start searching the web for how to build a website, how to do that and that. And after some searching, I found a service. I think it's still active. It's Homestead or something like that, with drag and drop and stuff like that. And I built that. I built my first website using that, and it was something beyond the matrix or something like that. And I was so proud of it. And I found a agency that was building really amazing websites, and I was like, "Oh God, I want to do that," because they were with Flash and stuff, and really amazing stuff. And I was like, "I want to do that. How do you do that? You need to do Photoshop, prepare a layout, slicing, and all that stuff." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I need to learn Photoshop." And I started learning Photoshop. I learned how to slice, how to export it as a HTML, and so on and so on. And of course, after I found myself with a bit of knowledge, I was like, okay, I guess I can get a job now and I can go to college at the same time. So I went to college to computer science. I I got my first job as kind of designer and web developer, and I created my first website in HTML and from Photoshop. And yeah, after that, I spent some years doing most design and not web development. And at some point, I realized that actually I want to go more into the web. And I start playing around with CMS like Joomla, WordPress. And at the same time, the need for websites exploded because every company wanted a website and stuff like that. I became a freelancer. I start doing some work with some companies outside of Romania. Um, and at some point, I joined a company, ORPALIS.
Why don't we I want to get to the Orphalus story. That's a good place to pause. One, I feel like we're showing our age, and I love talking about this because I think your journey, I was probably a little bit younger than you, but not much. But how much the internet really was this like, oh wow, this is an amazing thing. What, almost Wild Wild West. I mean, I remember building my first website using Angel Fire. I don't think it's even around anymore. Uh, you know, doing all kinds of stuff, and it was just cool to see it up there. And I mean, now they're the retro sites. These kids make, the designs look like what our first websites look like. And I remember seeing my first Flash site that was really done by my best buddy in high school's older brother, and he was a designer and just went like, oh wow, I never could imagine a website like this. Like this is an experience. It almost felt like a movie. Um, and kind of also I like to talk about video games because for me, gaming has been really what drew me to, computers and drew me to software development. And even some of the early languages I learned were, I don't know, I spent more hours than I care to remember playing Counter-Strike. And I remember half of what we were doing was like, well, we need to log stats from our scrimmages, and we need to log stats from our matches. So we need to, create a website and have a database to be able to do this. And that was the impetus to learn any of these programming languages. So I just really love that story because um, I think there's a lot of people that shared that story and you kind of caught the technology bug early in an impressionable time in your life. And it
Yeah.
was just, you were on fire with it. It was amazing. So that's really cool. Um, why don't we talk about, okay, let's talk a little bit about Orpolis and kind of what were they doing? How did you join it? Why did you join it? And ultimately, what were you doing there? Yeah.
What do you mean? What I joined it? Because of money?
Yes, the,
No.
the age-old question, right?
Yeah. Why did you join? Because of money. No. The idea at the time I was working with my brother, he just founded a company that was doing some outsourcing stuff. And I actually created the logo for the company. And I had a
Orpolis
friend.
says that. Orpolis, that is, or you created the logo for your brother's company. Which
No,
one?
for my brother company, I created the logo, and at the time there was not too much, I don't know, social media or stuff like that. We just had like Skype and Yahoo Messenger and stuff like that. And I put that logo as my profile picture in Skype, and one of my friends saw it and, did you create that? I said, yeah. Oh my God, I had somebody for you that wants logos for his company. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And he introduced it to our good friend Loic. And from there, it was like, I created the logo and he said, oh, this is amazing. Let's create a website because the website was created by him, which was
We all
okay.
know we all know about Loic and his UI design capabilities. You know,
Yeah.
I think
And and he asked me, okay, can you make the website? Of course, let's make a website. And I made a website. And after that, said, okay, but we need another website for ORPALIS because initially we created the website for just the picture, the product, and let's create the one for ORPALIS. Okay, do you want to make a contract for? Yeah, sure, why not? And that's how everything started from there. And my brother split because he wanted to do something else. He closed the company, and I was like, okay, I will join ORPALIS and move on. And from there, my web development starts because Loic was like, okay, we created the website, but in the website we need, I don't know, accordions, but we need contact forms, but this form need to connect with this service, and we need really good speed for Google, and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I had no freaking idea how to do that, and I was like, give me one day, and I will figure it out. And I start learning about Google, about all this implementation, all these technologies that you need to know when you're developing websites.
I think
And
I think
sorry,
that's a common theme in your story. It's one of the things I love about you, Cosmin, is that I mean, you're humble in how you say you can do things, but you're not afraid to go learn a new thing. And I think that, if anybody's listening that's a younger software engineer or just starting or something like this, I think this is the trait that really carries you throughout your career is like the beauty of the internet was you could learn it. The information's there. There's tutorials, there's forums, I mean, now we have AI. Like, if you really want to learn it and you want to put in the effort, it's more easy today to learn it. But the real holdup is not, is the information available or can you learn it? The holdup is it's maybe not going to be easy to learn it. You might run into loops where you have unproductive days or something like this. But do you have that tenacity, that willpower to just, no, I'm gonna go learn it. And are you comfortable being in an uncomfortable, I don't know what I'm doing land for a little bit? And it's something that I think you are very, very good at and you exhibit very well. I think it's funny that it started maybe even early, and then you happen at ORPALIS, and then even now at Nutrient, what you're working on now, you're running into it again, and I think that character trait of yours just really shines through. Um, so yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. So
no.
you're doing web development, you build GD Picture. We can talk a little bit about, I'll give a little bit of an overview of what the products are for the people that don't know. But what did you do? Okay, like give me a timeline. How far until I met Week are we back now?
This was happening in 2010.
Really
So,
far back.
yeah, I didn't say this at the beginning. I have over 20 something years of web dealing with. I cannot say web development because it was not really development in the beginning. It was more of, how it is when um, you see something, you say, I want to do that. That's really cool. How do I do that? And the first thing you do, at least was for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a template, I'm gonna play around with it, see how it's built, reverse engineering everything and try to
Yeah,
understand how it works.
yeah, of course.
And that was the first step. And at the same time, when I was saying that we're in 2010, I was doing this. I was taking templates and building stuff like that. When I started with Loic, it was fine in the beginning because just editing templates, just understanding some small things. But as we move on, new functionality was required, or he wanted something that was custom. And in that moment, you are hitting a wall because your team is not supporting that. So, okay, I guess I need to learn how to do it and do it from scratch. And yes, like you said, these days it's more and more easy to learn. If you want to learn it and if you want to get familiar with something, it's so easy. Back in the days, I sound like a really old man. No,
Yeah.
back in my days, no, but but in my when I was starting, it was really difficult to find information that you needed for creating something that is custom, and it
I
was a struggle.
remember I remember my brother giving me a book right before college, or maybe it was my freshman year of college. And it was literally when CSS became a thing and teaching me about style sheets. And it was a book. I mean, it was like this thick. And he was like, read this
Yeah.
book and you'll be able to do it. I mean, 2010 was an interesting time. My kids, you talk about being old. Whenever I talk about stuff, my kids are always like, "Oh yeah, Dad, in the olden days." And so every time I think about it, it's like, "Yeah, in the olden days." Um,
Yeah.
one of the things you brought up that I think it's interesting to touch on, because we've talked a little bit about this, and you're again, the way you humbly put it, working on the web has changed significantly, I would say, in the last 15 years. Um, you know, Originally early web development was essentially, I mean, HTML, right? Maybe some JavaScript here or there. But like I think now, and I think this is what you've seen. So you had this, then you had Flash, and Flash allowed you to do extra things, and all of a sudden you went from Flash wasn't super performant depending on which machine it was running on, so that was causing issues. You had the Internet Explorer, this was even before Chrome. Yeah, difficulties there, and I don't know. I need to build a website and style it for this this browser. I need to build another website. This was all before you had mobile, so you didn't have this like
Yeah.
mobile. So then all of a sudden mobile came on the scene, and it became, oh shit, I need to make websites that are styled and mobile responsive and things like this. And this is when you had Stack Overflow come into being. You had all this sort of packages, and I would say the early maybe it's the second wave of web development, and they were kind of looked down upon almost like it's like they're not real developers. They're just connecting these things and they're Googling and taking Stack Overflow. I mean, I think every engineer has done it. That's older than or been in the business for more than 3 years. And then kind of 2016, 2017, you have this rise of WebAssembly. We have a web product on it, but really, what it did was actually create a full service kind of, performant, uh, I hate to say it, environment, like a back end and a front end and a DOM that could keep information that all of a sudden now you see. I mean, I think some of web development today is still some of the problem you have now is a lot of those web engineers that have a lot of experience don't necessarily have the back end, CSS, whether it be, you know, matrix or data models or, memory performance and things like this. They just either they forgot it from their schooling days or they didn't really need to know it because they didn't need it. And now all of a sudden it matters, right? It makes a big difference in how performant that web app is. State really matters now, and thinking about this,
Yeah.
and so it does create uh it has been a crazy journey in that sense. And so I think a lot of people like you though, especially around, our age, if you got into web, you didn't need to be a full stack. I mean, I really didn't really if I'm anything, I'm a front end engineer. Right? Like I never even touched this. And so and I'm like you, I want to never call myself a front end engineer. Maybe now with Claude Code, I'd call myself a front end engineer. But
Yeah.
um, why don't we you did that in 2010. Get me to the point where I met Loic, you met me. Give me the 5 minutes in between there.
The 5 minutes. Okay, let's try. Uh, no, it's like I said, it's been a journey since I met Lake because, like you said, the web it was just starting up, and for the first years it was fine. Then, as you said, the mobile space appeared, and the responsiveness of the website come into play. I remember when one of my collaborators at the time asked me, "Hey, can we make this responsive?" I was like, "What? What's that?" And again, at the same point, learning, learning, learning. And for the rest of the 12 years, let's say till we met, it was just continuous learning and adapting and modifying and changing and more learning. And yeah, it was a ORPALIS at that point when I joined. It was kind of at the start. We are not so many. We're five, six, I think, something like that. And we kind of need to do everything. I remember doing support for GD Picture, and I was not a software developer. I didn't really understand the product, and I was like, yeah, okay, I will try to do that, sure. And I did it for a couple of months. I did some sales at some point because you need sales,
Cosmin,
right?
Cosmin the salesman. I think you'd be a good salesman, actually. Yeah, you're funny.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, let's say. Um, yeah, but as we grew, I had to focus more on what I was doing. And Lake used to say that this is how I became a web integrator because for the first 10 years, I think, we didn't know where to put myself, what job title, whatever. And I was like, and at some point, Lake was, you know what, you're going to be your own web integrator because you're doing that and that and that and that. And I was like, yeah, sure, works for me. And of course, I had to Google what a web integrator is because I had no idea. And funny enough, it was actually what I was doing. So I was like, okay, that's good. So when I met you and met everyone from PSPDF Kit, I was managing like six websites. I was doing design for the entire company, everything that we needed, and of course, implementing new functionality in the websites. So fun, really fun.
For the people that don't know, ORPALIS was a French company that was out of Toulouse, France, or technically Marais, which is a town outside of Toulouse. Um, Louis Cora, if I'm probably butchering his name in French, I think that's close.
Yeah,
Uh, was the founder of it. We met fairly early on, and this would have been in 2021, actually. Um, and PSPDF Kit at the time, we were going through our transaction with Insight Partners. Uh, we had no, like, PSPDF Kit at the time had some document processing. We had built an OCR engine that was wrapped around Tesseract. If you listened to the first episode, you heard a little bit about Nick talk about that. Um, but it was not really proprietary. It wasn't, let's say, production ready. It solved, it checked the box. And I remember, we were nowhere on the .NET space. We weren't a C# company at all. We were a Linux-based company coming from like the iOS space. We were really into viewing. UI and design was more of our benefit or more of our strength than anything else. And so I met Loic, and I remember looking into GD Picture and just going, wait a second, how? Like, this does this, this, this. Like, oh my God, I can't, like, and I feel like, I mean, shoot, there's still days where I'm learning something new that GD Picture does even now, like 3 years later. And it just blew my mind that this man and his team of engineers had built it. GD Picture as a .NET framework and its Nutrients .NET framework now, and it's all over our products now, both in low code and workflow, as well as in our API cloud products, as well as in our SDKs. Um, it was classic imaging, uh, an imaging processor, imaging renderer, doing things like deskewing, cleaning up stuff. It was a barcode reader. It was a freaking medical DICOM viewer, which, if you aren't in the space, you have no clue what I'm talking about. The big thing was that it was a PDF, parser and renderer, which built from scratch, which I think puts them in one of maybe 10 PDF parsers built in the entire world. Maybe there's a few more, but there's not as many as people think.
yeah,
Um, as well as an incredible OCR engine. Um, and I'm sure if Loic was here, he's like, you're leaving out a couple more, like the scanning. I can go down the list. Like I said, And so I also really, really enjoyed meeting Loic, and I enjoyed the way he ran his company. I really enjoyed the culture that he had built around that company. And I think you were, man, everybody still that's, here from ORPALIS, I think they would speak incredibly highly still. I mean, Loic's still a good friend.
Yeah.
Um, and so I saw this, I look back now where we're at now, and if we hadn't joined up with ORPALIS, where we would be. And I really think it was a very, very key merger, definitely for the company. Um, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't without, I think we were two small companies that did things with very strong, founders that maybe we were trying to figure out what it meant to grow up, and yet we were fighting growing up. And then maybe we grew up and found out growing up sucked, so we went back to being these founders. Like there's a bunch of journeys in there. But this led you tell this story, and I think it's a good segue about web integrator and Googling it. And I remember thinking back to October of last year, and we were at a retreat. It was your second retreat. Um, no, maybe is that right? Second or third retreat? Sorry,
Or yeah.
third retreat. Yeah. Um, and we were sitting here because we were launching Nutrient. Like we were changing from PSPDF kit, and we're gonna launch Nutrient, and we're struggling to consolidate. I think it was five or six websites, and there were two, I think four of the five, or maybe at least two of the five you were responsible for originally. Then we had
Yeah.
two other ones. And we were looking at titles, and I was looking at it, and I was just looking at the people that were in the room. We were in a kind of locked in a room, all hell bent on trying to get this rebrand launched. And I was like, these titles are stupid. What title do you want, Cosmin? And I think I was like, do you want like Web God? Is that the title you want, or something like this? Or why don't we just call you a front end engineer? And you're like, I'm not an engineer. I'm a web
Yeah.
integrator. And so I looked it up, and lo and behold, well, that's a pretty damn good definition of what you do. And I had never heard the title. I mean, coming from the US, web integrator was not something that I had heard often. And as software developers, you have this sort of funny thing with titles. There's some people get annoyed when you call them developers because they think you mean hacker. And I went to school for this. I'm an engineer. And then there's other people that are like, you're not an engineer. You don't actually have a board that certifies what you do, that you have to pass to do it. So it was really fun to meet somebody that was like, I'm a web integrator. Call me a web integrator. Um, why don't we talk a little bit about that period of time? Spend a few minutes talking about that rebrand. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you think about Webflow? You've worked with all these different CMSs in the past. You worked with WordPress. Picture was built on top of WordPress. Yeah, I'm gonna shut up. You tell me from your perspective, and I'll give you mine.
Are you sure you want to hear me talking about Webflow?
Yeah. Don't, I mean,
No.
come on. Like, be honest about it, I think, and be fair to it. But tell us our experience. Tell me your experience with it.
My experience with Webflow. I know I talk a lot of shit about Webflow, but it's not really that bad. Um, the Our main issue with Webflow is that it's not meant for us. Our website, and considering that we try to merge like four or five websites into one, Webflow is not the platform for us. It's really great for if you have a small company, if you have like one, two people in charge of handling the website, you don't have too many pages, you have a blog, you have stuff like that. I would recommend it actually
Yeah.
because it's really well built. It's stable. You can rely on it. It's really easy to modify and change some things. But this is only in the condition that you are having a small website. How we are with all our LOBs, the SDK, the low code, the workflow, and so on, it's a lot. And considering our team is quite big and a lot of people are working constantly on the website, having just the designer access that needs to be passed from one person to another, it's really holding us back mm, to publish content fast. And like I said, not ideal for us. It's not, don't get me wrong, it's good, but for small companies. For us, not so much.
Yeah, yeah, I think for people that haven't used Webflow, they have this idea of, it's a very visual website editor. And I would agree. I think it's pretty good if you're a one or two person team, you're next to each other, you have a smaller website and you need to put it together, and maybe you're not as technical and this helps you. It also allows you, if you are technical, to do customizations and things, and it has a great ecosystem. I wouldn't disagree with all that. I think what really falls down here is that it doesn't really have great collaboration between multiple people working. It doesn't
Yeah,
it doesn't have a history like GitHub. It has a history, but you can't revert back. You can't pick and choose, right? Multiple people working on a project a page at the same time, you get conflict merging, you get all kinds of things that aren't resolved. And so you'll make a change, like a perfect example. I want to change the text on this website. Once you change it, you can't go back. You don't see what the old text was. So, and you don't know necessarily, someone made text changes and it might tell you who that someone is. You don't know where they made the changes and where they didn't make the changes. Um,
yeah,
and I think speaking a little bit about where we were at, you talked about it. We're merging 4 or 5 different websites. We're trying to do redirects. I mean, there was a lot of it wasn't easy what we were trying to do, for sure.
yeah,
And we were trying to restyle pages. How do we take a product page? Do we put it into our blog? How do we handle this while we're also building these pages out? I think that's an interesting problem that we ran into that I do think if someone runs into, I need to consolidate these 3 websites even, you run into it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were doing there? Maybe this is even outside of Webflow, so that we don't spend the whole time just talking about our frustrations that we're running into with a large team trying to work on a product that's meant for a single person to have design control at one time, right? Um,
yeah. So the issue that we ran at that point was, um, as you know, our old website was built using middleman and Ruby, and our blog and guides were under using they were built using Markdown. So we
a
kind of
special markdown as well, like a special markdown variant is what I would call it.
let's not go too much into details because we're gonna spend the entire day here. Yeah, it was kind of a special kind of markdown with partial Ruby partials and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the issue that we had, that we need to migrate all of that to Webflow. And in that moment, we kind of hit a wall, a big wall, because mapping everything from middleman to Webflow was not that easy. And we realized that this is not going to work. So we had to find a solution. We worked with our platform team and kind of make a mix between Webflow and our old website. So we kept the guides and the blog in the old website and moving everything else to Webflow. But here comes the trick. The old website looked about a bit different than what we had in Webflow. So we found ourselves with 2 weeks to go, I think, before launch, that, hey, we need to restyle our entire website to match what we have in our Webflow. So, war room in our retreat and spending all that time. making sure that all the redirects are in order, all the blog articles are rendering correctly, we have the correct styling, we have the correct navigation between the two platforms because we had Webflow and middleman, and they need to share the same main menu, the same footer, the same. And I was like, okay, this looks like a really nice fun job.
You know, one of the things we ran into that I thought was awesome, because I do think it was one of the first times I had seen, we brought in a couple engineers that I would consider some of our better engineers at our company that are, let's say, a little bit skeptical of AI. But in this case, man, we were on ChatGPT having ChatGPT write scripts all day long to try to help us with this. And we also were finding out where ChatGPT was falling down trying to write scripts because we realized all the exceptions in our, how complex of a problem we ultimately had with styling some of this stuff. I also think it's fair, and we should say this, is we had built Middleman off of Middleman early on when we had one DevOps contractor. It was never built to scale to what we did. Um, and it wasn't great. It got to the point where, I mean, you could locally run it if you could figure out the packages, which ultimately could cause some issues. So nobody that isn't, super technical could even load the website to be able to mess with it. But even then, when you deployed it, even if you made a simple change on GitHub and ultimately changed some text on GitHub, the amount of times that, like, the time it took to build the website and push it to production was like 25 minutes. I mean, it was nuts. It was really unreasonable to be able to work. And so we knew we needed to migrate it. I just don't think the decision made at the time to do it via Webflow, we found out very quickly wasn't made by a technical person. And we ran into the challenges of, like you said, Webflow just not being the right technology choice for us. Um, but I really love that. I mean, I look back at that I don't know how you all you look back at it, but I look back to the war room fondly because we were all sitting together, and for a remote company that this is our big time to get together, we were all sitting together working our tails off trying to make this happen. And unfortunately, we didn't get it done in a week, but I think we got it done within 3 weeks from
Yeah,
the retreat.
yeah.
Um, Anything else you want to talk about there besides we before we let's my like I want to talk a little about Astro because we are in the process of solving the problem we had there, and you were knee deep in it. But is there anything else you want to talk about, during that time that you think would be valuable to people?
Uh, yeah, not so much. Just one thing. No, sorry. For me, that retreat was a really learning experience. Like I said, it was fun to be with everyone there, to work on the same problem and that collaboration. And when you're in a remote company, that's something that you kind of miss
Yeah, for
working
sure.
daily. I have 15 years of doing remote jobs. So in the beginning was fun. Now, not so much. You need interaction, you need collaboration, you need to talk with people. But one thing that maybe people should consider before starting doing a project like this or trying a migration like this or something, plan, plan. Do you as much planning as you need. Trust me, it's gonna pay dividends in the end, like big time.
Yeah, this is definitely not a project you can just start hacking and iterating on. It's something that you will move faster if you move a little slower at first.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we could spend a whole podcast talking about remote. I've been doing it 12 years now, and I would agree with what you said. There's, the nice benefits of it. There are benefits, but I think I like to say when 2020 happened, the only thing that didn't change in my life was my day-to-day job. Um, but the thing I think that I watch friends go remote and hybrid work and stuff like that, and I always told them, hey, that there's downsides. There's issues, communication, missing interaction, working together, that energy you get from that,
Yeah.
that bonding you get from that, and but anyways, we could spend a long time on remote, and maybe that's another podcast we should do, or podcast episode. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how we landed on Astro? Your first, I mean, okay, web integrator that doesn't do software development, that's now building a website and migrating over to Astro. Talk to me a little bit about it. What have been your thoughts with it, and why did we pick it, and how's it
Yeah,
going?
so we realized that Webflow is not going to work for us, and our old project, which was built, like I said, in Middleman with Ruby, again was not going to do us for us. The build time was really long, even in development, like you said, it's going to take a lot of time just to make it work on your machine. After that, when you're developing on it, the live preview was taking like 5 minutes just to show you that you changed the border color. It was like insane. You lost a lot of time. So we decided to okay, let's try to find a good solution for us because we need speed, we need to be able to control it, and all that. And after we did some research and play around a bit with Next.js, we had Muhimbi website, which was built in Next.js. It was really fine. But we play around a bit with headless CMS to see if it's something that we can use. And but not everything was the way we wanted. So at that time, somebody from our web team decided to, hey, I'm going to create a POC for using Astro. It's a new framework. It's really fast, builds really well, and maybe we can use it. And he created a POC using our documentation and tried to see. After we did some tests with that, we realized that actually this is really, really, really nice. Maybe we should consider moving to it. And and we did. And we took that POC and trying to build on it and see, hey, let's see what we can do with this. And this is where we first hit a roadblock because we realized that the way that we did it, it was with Astro and Starlight. Starlight, for everyone that doesn't know, it's a team for Astro, but it's designed specifically for documentation. But we didn't need something for documentation. We actually need something for everything: blog, marketing pages, guides, getting started, and so on. So everything. And realize that, hey, this is not going to work for us because we're going to fight a lot with the Starlight just to get what we need. At that point, we decided that, hey, we're going to go with pure Astro and build everything from scratch. In that moment, we created a plan and we kind of decided in what direction to go. That means we can use components or packages that Astro provide, or we can create our own. We are engineers, except me. And we said, okay, we need full control because we need to be able to style everything as we want. We need everything to work as we want, and we don't want to be restricted by other packages or, I don't know, plugins and stuff like that. So in that moment, I start creating the architecture for the entire project. Uh, since for me, the most important thing when you start from zero is to have a good base. It's gonna take a lot more time to create that base, to have everything in place, to understand everything where it is and how it is. And like I said, planning, 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 planning. Right now, it's actually starting to create to pay dividends because in the beginning, we were just two people that we were working on this, and we brought more people as we grew the project. And everybody that joined was like, "This is really well put together because it's really well to navigate, it's really well to understand where to go and where to find it." That is what I was telling you earlier about planning, 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 because it's going to be much, much easier for people that join or they want to do some work on the website to do it.
Why don't we talk a little bit about that? Because I think early days, and I think you gave a really good outline. We had one of our web engineers say, "Hey, we were thinking about our documentation. Let's redo it for web. Used Astro, used the theme. You talked about Starlight. Um, then it was like, okay, Cosmin, go rebuild the entire website, so we can get the hell off of Webflow." And when can you have it done? Can you have it done in 3 months? Like, hey, we're going to have a war room again. And we're going to invite you. We're going to want you to do it in a week, right? And you're doing it. Like, I mean, I think what's really clear to get clear to the audience is how complex you think it's just a website, and it's a lot more than that. And there's differences. Our documentation is almost like a whole website on its own. Our blog is almost like a whole website it's on its own. And then we have a bunch of integrating product pages, landing pages, and things like this, and speed, structure, being able to change it, but it's still being consistent. We also, let's say, we care about design at our company, so it's not like it's just some ugly baby we're putting up there. And sometimes that also means pixel perfect, uh, looks, and making sure they work on responsiveness, so they work on mobile and things like this. And Astro helps with that. But I think one of the things that you glazed over right there was it went from just you to all of a sudden we hired I mean, I think he would call himself a junior engineer. I think he's crazy intelligent. Uh, but he was still, I think he actually just graduated from his CS
Yeah,
program at NC State. And I said, "Oh, Cosmin, here's an extra person." And you said, "I've never managed anyone before." And then all of a sudden it was like, "Hey, here's two more engineers because we need to speed up this because we are increasingly getting frustrated using Webflow." And then all of a sudden we added another person, and here you are. You went from I'm the sole person working on this project to now I have a bunch of people working on this project. I think one of the points you made, but I want to hear you talk about it, is planning, because you knew at least you weren't going to be the only one working on the website when you were even working on your own. But talk to me about what that experience has been like, going from just you building it yourself to now I have a team of people to now I have, I'm managing these people as well as trying to build it. Tell me a little bit. What's that been like for you?
fun.
I love
No,
that.
it was. You know that I don't. I love challenges, and from getting back to the gaming games, I really love adventure games with puzzles and stuff like that. It feels like that every day with web development. Something new comes up, something, look at this technology, look at that, and you need to figure out how it works. And for Astro, it was kind of like that. So I started working on Astro by myself, and I was like, okay, I talked to Martin, I talked to you about Astro, and I said that, hey, we need a good foundation. We really need to say, oh yeah, sure, Cosmin, go on. And so, okay, I'm not a web developer, I'm not a front-end engineer, but yeah, sure. And of course. guess what? AI comes into play here a lot because it's it's faster now than reading the documentation just to ask AI, and um, it helped a lot in the beginning with Astro. It's not just about the Astro documentation; it's quite big, and you can read it. Probably a lot of engineers are not reading the documentation, so
Surprise, surprise. I don't think that's
yes,
surprising at all.
surprise, surprise. And they just dig into the project. It's kind of what I did. And dig into the project, of course, watch a lot of tutorials, trying to understand how the
You
Astros work.
talk a little bit about you were using Cursor at the time and you were using AI. Like when you say AI, you're using a model inside Cursor where it would
Yeah,
could load up and understand the documentation and you could ask it questions. It could also help you write some boilerplate code
yeah,
there, right?
I went from actually windsurf. At that time, it was I watched a bit about the tool, and the windsurf was kind of better at that time than Cursor, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna use Windsurf. I used Windsurf at the beginning, and it was really great most of the time,
What
let's
were the
say.
issues you had? What were like tell little details. Like don't just gloss over. Yeah.
Um, it was good at analyzing the entire project, okay? But when you're going deep and wanted to look at specific not actions, I don't know, specific component, let's say, or something like that, he was starting to lose context and he
And
was not,
hallucinate.
yeah, he was hallucinating. I spent, I built a component for breadcrumbs that we're using in our documentation. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use AI to help me refactor this and make it really production ready and stuff like that. And we had some issue with the routing inside Astro, how it's going. No exaggeration. I spent 6 hours going in circles with the AI because he was going always proposing the same changes again. I was like,
Very confidently
"Mm."
as well, I'm sure.
So much frustration. I was like, dude, we talk about this 4 times.
So
Anyway,
you moved to Cursor next, right?
yeah, I moved to Cursor again because of this context. He was able to keep the context of the entire project a bit better
What
than
models were you working with? Do you remember?
uh, yeah, Claude 3.5 and a bit of Gemini at some point, but I found out that it was not that
Yeah.
reliable as Claude 3.5. At some point it was Claude 3.7, but this one was hallucinating as well, and a lot. And I was like, okay, no, going back to 3.5 because it's better. So yeah, was the beginning of Astro with just me. Steven joined after that, and like I said, I told you never lead somebody. And I was like, okay, I guess I need to do that now. But Steven is a really smart kid, and he even if we kind of throw him at the back end and just like, hey, see this big project. Can you work on this? And I'm like, scary. So I presume it was scary for him, but let's say. And at at that point, everything started to feel a bit more doable, let's say. Because when I was working alone, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna freaking finish this year. And Stephen joined, and I was like, okay, maybe somewhere in September, October maybe, we can have it ready. After that, like I said, more people join. Alexandros, and I hope I didn't butcher his name. Sean, and at that point, when they join, I was like, okay, yeah, I think we can have this ready by the end of June, no, July or August, let's say.
Hmm.
It was really, really impactful. The thing that I didn't consider is that, let's say I'm the architect of the Astro project, and I kind of need to manage them because, you know, they have a lot of questions, and it's
Yeah,
normal
of
because they
course.
didn't work. And I was like, okay, answer this, but I need to work on this component. And I was working, and hey, Cosmin, how do I do? Well, okay, let's do this. And you know, I guess this is managing, right?
Yeah, it's you don't realize the tax on the context switching. I mean, early days working with Peter, I remember it was said to me because you know, he yelled at me and said, "Listen, I have two blocks in my day. I have two like 4 to 6 hour blocks. If you interrupt one of those 4 to 6 hour blocks, it's done for me." And he was like, "I realize you're on calls, you're doing emails, you're context switching, and I'm super ADD. So for me, context switching is, let's say it's a superpower that I can do it." But I mean, I had like 15-minute, 30-minute blocks and learning how developers work. And so I do think that's one of the hard things. Engineers that are used to being highly productive, you need to focus, you need to get into flow state. And then when you're asked the question, you need to do this, you know it's important, you need to do it. So it becomes difficult to manage IC work and managing at the same time.
Yeah,
And normally, most people enjoy the IC work a little bit more than the managing, but they realize the benefit they need for the managing. So it's a struggle, right?
yeah, it's kind of like that. But again, this is about the what I was telling you earlier: planning, planning, planning. Since it was planned right from the beginning, it's really easy to bring somebody new. And even if it's a bit of managing here and there, the fact that we started right, it helps now. And it's just pointing, like spending 1 minute to pointing somebody in the right direction, and from that, they can figure out by themselves.
I want to spend about 10 more minutes, I think is our limit before people are already snoozing and falling asleep listening to me. Um,
Or
but
me.
I want to get to Claude Code a little bit, but continue the journey. So now you have these people, you went from Windsurf to Cursor. Where would you
Yeah.
say you're at now, and how are you using AI to build it now?
So like I said, I went from being myself to having a bigger team, and I was like, okay, this is doable. And at the same time, we were using Cursor. Everybody actually was using Cursor because it's faster and it brings a lot of speed in your development. But again, it was falling short in some places. The project was becoming really complex, really, really complex, and we had a lot of components, a lot of moving pieces, and I was like, it was not able to keep track. And trying, sometimes trying to modify a component or implementing something new, it was actually taking a bit more time than actually doing yourself. And this is when Code came, and everybody go insane. Okay, Code. This is interesting. Okay, okay. And we start playing around with Code, and it was like, okay, this is something that we can really, really use. And I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not perfect. It's still falling short from here and there, but it's it's kind of there, you know? I mean, from my personal experience, and I think Alex also can attest to this, when we develop two components, he worked on the Algolia component, and I don't remember exactly in which component I worked, but it shortened our development for a couple of days to a couple of hours, which is
Yeah,
wow.
mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind blowing to have something like that. And it's not like um, you just ask Claude Code, hey, do this, and he will do it. I wish it was like that, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, probably for small application or small websites and stuff like that, you can do that and leave it there and just submit your changes and you're good to go. But in our case, it's a bit tricky because you need to look at the changes that is proposing. You need to understand it. So uh, a good experience with what you're doing, it's really good to have. Um, I really love the planning options that it has.
Yeah.
Somebody will say that this guy is obsessed with planning,
He also tells you
but
all the plans take 4 weeks and then he implements them in like, 30 minutes. And you're like, yeah, 4 weeks. Thank you.
so I really like that option with the planning. I really like the fact that he has agents that you can trigger and do some other things. It's just, like I said, for me, it's really cool. It's really helping, and I learn a lot. I mean, just asking simple question about infrastructure or some pieces of code that you don't really understand. Like I said, I'm not an engineer, so I don't understand everything. But when I see parts of code that I don't understand, I really like to ask him and, hey, how this works? Why is this working this way? And stuff like that. Also reviewing implementation with Git, but to review PRs. Like I said, we are a big team that we are working in this project. A lot of my colleagues ask me, "Hey, can you review this and look at that?" And it's more simple using Cloud Code to review a PR because it's giving you all the context and stuff like that, and just reading the description of the PR or looking into the files. And after that, after Cloud Code is give you the entire review, you can look at the files and you understand everything, how it works and what needs to be improved and stuff like that.
I think, we did our first episode. We probably recorded it over 3 weeks ago. And it was with Nick Viner, who's running, the AI team, built most of our AI stuff. And he talked a lot about vibe coding and kind of where it's at, and where it's there, and this idea that you need to like dive into it. And we did this before Cloud Code was like had just been released. Uh, I've since done it, and we talked to kind of go full circle. We talked about the internet and how we got kind of caught on fire when the internet came along. I would tell you the past 3 weeks have felt more like that as a kid with the internet being caught on fire with
Yeah.
Cloud Code than anything else in my journey. And you say you're not an engineer. I'm way less of an engineer than you are. But I do think you bring up some good points. One, I think the fact that being in your IDE is one thing. Being able, and there's benefits, I think, to using Claude and Cursor, and there's some, definitely depends on what project you're working on. I personally, for a person with my technical level, really enjoy that, I can look at the code after the fact. And in fact, if I needed to look at the code and I started to do things, now depends on what you're doing. I built an Astro theme was the first thing I did. I went down a rabbit hole of project, and I'm still in a rabbit hole of projects using it because any problem I have now, I try to solve with this Cloud Code. Um, what we've run into is one, because we've built some stuff on top of our stuff, is documentation is written for humans. Like you talked about, nobody reads Astro's documentation. I don't know how much people are going to read documentation in the future, but it needs to be written so that LLM can understand it, right? And that's still a challenge. The other thing is, I do think there's this subject matter expertise that you brought up, and you said you need to have some experience to be able to understand it because it's not perfect. It will run in loops, and I've run in those 3 hour loops, it confidently telling me with this great language that it's solving it, especially around like CI test and integration test. It's just nuts. But I think if you know the language, uh, you can prevent it before it starts going down a path that you know is wrong early.
Yeah.
And we built a Python wrapper around our DWS, our Document Web Services API, with Martin, and Martin didn't know Python. So it was like a little bit difficult, but we got something working. But then we realized, it actually didn't build it off of our API reference. We need to change it. It didn't get the builder API right. The builder API is kind of complex even for a human. Uh, but then he did it in Ruby, and he knows Ruby, and he could write a better spec. He could stop it when it went down a path, and all of a sudden, it was a massive accelerator, like you're saying it. So I do think that industry knowledge, language knowledge, use case knowledge, and software development best practices, and what you talk about planning, because it can put together a shitty plan, and if you don't know what a good plan looks like, you don't know that it's a shitty plan,
Yeah.
and then you feel like you're getting a lot of productivity, and it's only after the fact that you're like, man, I could have probably done this quicker if I built it myself, right? But I do think the thing you hit at, and the thing that blows my mind, is just how quickly it's
Yeah.
incredibly fast. And speed, even with the error rate of it, I feel like me going through a brute force error loop with Claude is still faster sometimes than building from scratch. Um, and that to me, I think is the cool thing. And I do think we're in the early days of it. You talked about using these subagents and NCP servers, and people are learning how to give it rules. They're expanding some of the tool set of it. They're expanding context windows. Do I think it will be able to, hey, you have this really massive project, bring Claude Code in and it will do everything all itself and you can replace all engineers? I don't think that will ever happen, personally. But
Say that to
do
my
I,
wife.
yeah, I think some people are afraid of it, the people that don't understand it well enough, as well as don't understand the nuance, because I think there's still a lot of human value in some software development. I think in boilerplate integration testing, what's the human? I mean, as long as you understand that it's actually doing integration testing and not mimicking doing immigration testing, which it does, uh, I think it takes away a lot of the stuff. Like you said, I want you to review this PR. Well, now I'm not working at a blank page and I don't have to work with zero context. And I also, trust me, I'm smart enough to know don't just trust everything this says, right? And
Yeah.
that's massive productivity accelerator. Um, I think y'all, what you all are doing building this Astro website, you've seen it even along as you've built it because it's gotten better as you've gotten it. And I'm sure you've gotten faster as you've gotten it. And at the same time, the project complexity has gotten larger, and therefore the benefit that Claude Code or any one of these code generation models, it becomes less and less the more complex the project is, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing that. I don't know. That's my opinion from what I've seen with it. I don't know if you share that.
No, I share that. It's kind of like that. I don't know how to say it. Cloud is bringing a lot of value to, let's not say Cloud, AI brings a lot of value to the development, and it's improving your speed exponentially, I think. And but at the same time, is like I said, you really need to keep it in place. For me, it's a tool.
And know the
That's what,
limitations.
yeah, it's a tool. You need to, you you are, the better you are, the better you understand your tool. If you understand how it works, what its limitations are, and how to communicate with it, the better it will become.
I think you make an important point there. I think it's a good last point. The better you understand what you're trying to do, the subject matter that you're operating in, the problem
Yeah,
you're trying to solve, things like this, the more powerful this tool is. also, the more you've worked with this tool and you understand how to get the benefit and how to communicate it with it
Yeah,
and
exactly.
what you need to do, because there is a learning curve to Claude Code. I mean, I've had it in the three weeks I've been using it. I'm infinitely better with it now than I was 3 weeks ago. I've stopped, I realize things, you pattern recognize, you have tools that are better. And even now, I think that Super Claude is an MCP server that just I saw last night on Twitter, and I'm going to try it today. It's there's things coming out constantly to make it better, but those two things still matter. Like you need to have it, you don't just start it up and it one shots and it's great for you. And if you're working on something you have no clue what you're working on, guess what? This ain't gonna help you either. There is no magic bullet, and it's not a magic
Yeah,
bullet, but it is, I don't know, it is the difference between a propeller gasoline engine and a jet engine. Like, it's like a rocket, right? And it can make you go faster. Sometimes that means go faster in the wrong place, and sometimes that means go faster in the right place, right?
right. Or it can
Well,
make boom.
hey, Cosmin, uh, thank you for taking the time. Thank you
Yeah,
for being guinea pig number two. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know that people are going to enjoy hearing your story. I think a lot of people resonate with it. They'll definitely enjoy your humor. I think we got that across. Um, so thank you for taking the time. Until next
thank you as
time,
well.
we'll do it again.
Yeah, let's do that again.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.